and welcome to the 15th instalment of this exciting series of shows sponsored by Dublin City Comics and Collectibles, where we, the Full Force, take an in-depth look at the old Action Force comics in no particular order. We have decided to delve into one of the largest Action Force stories in the run, and we will be breaking it up into smaller, bite-sized episodes because it spans so many frigging issues. I am Chris, Operation Mudhound McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me on this episode, as always, is Brian, Operation Chodmound Hickey. so let's get on with it, shall we? Explosion.
Proceeding with reckless abandon, thrashing through the back catalogue of Battle Action Force, this episode of Disorder of Battle brings you Operation Bloodhound! Part 1. Originally published in Battle Action Force over 29 issues from 8th of October 1983 through to the 23rd of June 1984.
Wow, credits include writer Jerry Day, artists Jeff Campion and Cam Kennedy, letterers Maurice Dolphin, John Aldrich, Peter Knight, Clive McGee, Mike Peters, Tim Skomsky. Colours by Cameron Brown, John Doe, Robert Geis, Kong Kok Keong, Jim Marshall, Jamar Miller, John O'Hagan, Bart Simon and Chris Smith for the colour version on Blood for the Baron.
Our cast includes SAS Squad Leader Charles Richard Buckingham, codename Eagle, SAS Force Commando Hans Jorge Muller, codename Quickfire, SAS Boat Patrol Commando Robert Albert Jones, codename Stakeout, SAS Para Commando Peter Vanderberg, codename Sparrowhawk, SAS Force Corporal Jones, codename Shotgun, SAS Force Commando, codename Crow, SAS Force Commando, codename Samson.
Baron Ironblood, Red Shadows Suicide Squad.
Air Force Officer Cordobes, codename Inca, Brazilian Military Authorities, Brazilian Soldier Pelé, Brazilian Paratroopers, Native American Tribespeople.
And of course we have the SAS Boat Patrol and the awesome Red Shadow helicopter gunship.
Ooh, yeah, that's going to be a nice one. Story synopsis: Operation Bloodhound. The mission to locate Baron Ironblood, the mad warlord in hiding somewhere in South America, had been assigned to SAS Force.
Mission 1. Mountain village ruins in the high Andes, possibly Chile or Argentina. Our story begins in the high Andes as we see a Lynx helicopter zero in on a ruined mountain village.
A few days earlier, SAS Force had received their mission briefing at Action Force Base located in Central Europe. Satellite intelligence shots had pinpointed the Baron's secret base in the high Andes. Captain Buckingham and his team were given the task of spotting the exact location and then calling in an airstrike to destroy the evil Baron once and for all. Accompanying the Action Force team as liaison for the South American forces was Air Force Officer Cordobes, codename Inca.
Yeah, this is cool. What I really found interesting about this whole story is the fact that we do see unmasked Baron, but I'm not even sure if it's the Baron we're looking at, you know what I mean? Because it's like this, that one shot of the dossier has him with like that real like tight crew cut and the shaved sides and no facial hair, apart from what is like, you know, maybe like a tiny little bit around the kind of mustache area. He looks nothing like his figure and nothing like what we've seen him previous to this.
That is a really good point. And I didn't even think of that. But when we look at how the story unfolds, in part 1, and we'll see it again in part 2, it raises the question, do Action Force actually have a clue as to who Baron Ironblood actually is? Yeah,
I've got a feeling a lot of these are kind of like, you know, fake Ironbloods so that the real one can kind of, you know, maintain anonymity. But, you know, again, it's never said, it's never kind of like put out there for like officially. It's just something that you kind of assume based on reading between the lines. And I do like the design I like the way he's drawn in this shot, the dossier shot. But we do see like later on in certain panels where they've kind of not got his face like clearly. You can't really see it. And, you know, it's kind of like the similar design, isn't it?
I think that's another really good point there. So there are a few times where we see Ironblood unmasked, but maybe his face is in shadow. We don't get a really good look at him. And I wonder if this is, a deliberate attempt by the creative team who worked on this story run, which ran for about 18 months with Baron Ironblood as before he became Corporate Commander, where, his identity, it's never really revealed. He's almost always underneath the helmet, and the very few times we get a glimpse of him, his features are obscured, with the exception, obviously, of this dossier, which is one of the very few times where you actually see a clear image of his face.
Yeah, especially after that initial story where we had him on the cover, and I suppose they were just copying his action figure style, the middle-aged Sean Connery, I like to call it. Okay, so jumping back to the present, actually I will say one more thing on the dossier. He's responsible for the deaths of 500 plus Action Force personnel. I mean, that's a lot of dead bodies that's more than wartime.
That's a lot. Wow. I mean, the battle for Ascendancy Island must have been fairly bloody. Because, again, this picks up straight after. So we've had that battle for Ascendancy Island. They think they've destroyed Baron Ironblood. Then we have the mini-comic run where Ironblood makes a comeback.
Yeah.
And we know there's obviously deaths for Space Force, Z Force and SAS Force. Q Force get off a bit lighter. But so really what's happening now is on the back of all of that, Action Force are like, okay, we've got to take this threat seriously. We're going to track this guy down. We've got intelligence that says he's in South America. We're going after him with a vengeance.
Yeah. So, jumping back to the present, SAS Force and their Brazilian counterparts rappel into the landing zone. Our heroes locate the entrance to the Red Shadow's base and dispose of the few sentries posted outside. Making their way inside, they work their way down through the levels to discover a sophisticated and high-tech looking control room.
Look at that! Control room. That's a fantastic panel there.
So James Bond, this, isn't it? I mean, it looks like something out of like the main villain's HQ. It's amazing.
I'm pretty sure that troop carrier, we've seen something like that in like maybe Goldfinger or something.
Oh yeah, like that kind of, like when you see it reminds me of that little vehicle that Austin Powers gets stuck in when he's trying to like do a 3-point turn and he's just literally taking forever to turn around. That's what that reminds me of. But it's really cool, and I mean that would be like a pretty, not an easy, but like a pretty cool custom for someone to knock up, wouldn't it?
That would be a great little base to make. You've got the cavernous kind of chamber for the roof, and then you have this what looks like sort of a bridge with these supports, and then underneath that they've got computer terminals, and then they've got their, every base has got to have the wall of television screens where they can keep an eye on everything. And I really love this map of South America with these key points highlighted on it. And I wonder maybe when we've covered all of the different missions that take part in this story, how many of them correspond with those actual dots on the map.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned before we recorded this to me that they could be like, potential HQs for Red Shadows all over South America, which is really neat. We could like line up an actual map of South America just to see where they are there, couldn't we? Really?
Right. You know what? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that today after we record, and when we put the video up, I'll have that. I'll give you that graphic.
Oh, thanks, man.
That in.
I appreciate it. I really do like this, and I'm desperate. I want to make something like this, and I love that little bridge is it could be like a walkway, or it could be some sort of like speedy like train to get troops, or to get people from this point to other points in the HQ. I kind of like the thought of it being like some sort of like kind of futuristic kind of train going through it.
Oh, monorail, yes.
Yeah, big time. Monorail. Yeah, cool.
You beat me to it.
Sorry.
Almost instantly, alarms go off and poisonous gas is released, killing everyone within the facility. However, SAS Force, being equipped with gas masks, begin making their way back to the surface. As they pass an open door, Eagle hears a voice that he recognises. He investigates and sees that it's Baron Ironblood on video. He tells Eagle that irreversible time fuses have been set to blow the armory and the entire base sky high.
As they rush to the surface to escape, they find they're trapped by scores of red shadows waiting outside the base. Eagle has an idea and hurries back inside and finds some parachutes which they can use to jump off the edge of the mountain, but there's not enough for everyone. They draw straws, leaving behind 2 of their team.
Our remaining heroes escape. despite Red Shadow's suicide attacks to collapse their parachutes. But at an Action Force base on Ascendancy Island, they are informed that the mission is back on, as new evidence has emerged of the Baron's whereabouts.
So Corporal Jones is actually shotgun?
Is shotgun. So obviously we think of Corporal Jones as Stakeout, who's kind of Eagle's sort of sidekick that accompanies him on all of his missions. And in this particular mission, Trooper Albert Jones isn't actually present for this mission. So and we have Corporal Jones, aka Shotgun.
It's basically the two that they've just made up of the ones that draw the short straws, which is like so harsh, isn't it?
The equivalent of the Trekkie red shirts,
Yeah, Shotgun and Crow are the new red shirts, big time.
But it did confuse me at first when I read this because, I know Jones is Stakeout, and when I thought, Corporal Jones, and he didn't make it, hang on a sec. But the fact that the clue is in the corporal, because Albert Jones is not a corporal.
Yeah, exactly. Now we move on to Mission 2, Jungle in the Upper Amazon in Brazil. The surviving SAS Force members are deployed to Brazil and joined by SAS Force commandos Stakeout and Samson. They meet with local military authorities who tell them of reports of a white man in white seen in parts of the jungle upriver. Accompanied by a contingent of Brazilian military forces, SAS Force head upriver in their SAS patrol boats to investigate a beach where Ironblood was supposedly spotted. As they travel, Stakeout tells of rumours that he's heard of headhunters in the depths of these jungles.
I love the opening colour spread for this. So when this story was running in Battle Action Force, it had the centre spread of the comic, which was usually dedicated to a full colour piece. So, the cover, front and back cover would be full colour, the centre spread would be full colour, and the rest of it would be black and white. Yeah. And this is a really beautiful piece. This shot of the Chinook, the Chinook kind of coming into the base is the SAS Force reinforcements really make a big impact.
I like the obviously the SAS camouflage they're wearing as well. That kind of black on grey, or that kind of darker grey on light grey is really cool. It's
nice. You don't normally see them in their kind of their more regular, more relaxed kind of combat fatigue. So it's nice to see Eagle with the beret and stuff. It's a nice touch.
Some nice custom options as well there if you want to kind of make a kind of like a standard Eagle with his beret on. The amount of the ease with which you can get Action Force figures and use those head sculpts, to knock onto another figure. A big shout out to Matt Paul, who I'm not sure if he's listening to these episodes, but if he does, big shout out to Matt Paul. He makes amazing customs. Like he does like a lot of vintage, kind of the vintage G.I. Joe kind of articulated figures. He makes as the 5-point of articulation characters. He kind of upgrades them, and he's done a few SAS ones, and they're absolutely superb. So massive.
I have seen some of them. They are so brilliant. That's
good.
Great work.
If I can find any images, I'm sure I'll be able to find some on his Instagram. I'll throw them up on the video as well. They're just so good. So big shout out to Matt, who does amazing work as well, like 3D print stuff, and amazing stuff you do, mate. Love it. Keep it up. If you're listening, you might not be listening.
They arrive at their destination and quickly storm the beach, but discover only the remains of a campfire. There's obvious rivalry between the SAS and Brazilian troops, with Stakeout nicknaming one of the Brazilian soldiers Pele.
Sorry, I loved that.
Pele draws his machete and is about to attack Stakeout, but before he can strike, he is hit in the neck with a poison dart and collapses. More arrows and poison darts fly from the jungle. Our heroes take cover, and it's only then that they notice a wood carving in a tree that resembles the helmeted form of Baron Ironblood, confirming his presence in the jungle.
I have to say at this point that Stakeout is from Liverpool, I believe, and he is all about like football. Kind of, he says a lot of stuff about soccer/football as we know it. So obviously there's one moment where he says, when he's I think when him and Pele are kind of together again later on in the issue, he says something like Liverpool and Brazil make the best teams, which I thought was really funny because obviously at the time Liverpool were huge. They are now obviously, but they were a force to be reckoned with back then when this was out. And also Brazil obviously were, hugely popular as a soccer nation. And Pele, the fact that he calls him Pele is just another kind of nod to him as a Scouser being very into soccer, which I think is just brilliant.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, and that bit of rivalry between the two guys is it starts off a little bit, you might think Jones is kind of being a bit OTT, but when Pele pulls out the machete, it's like, hang on a sec.
Yeah,
but it's a bit of humor in there as well,
Yeah, I really liked it. I love the rivalry between them, and you kind of expect that a little bit, don't you? And in typical action force or battle action force style, they go overboard, and the guy pulls a machete out, like you said. So it's like it's only in line, in keeping with what you expect with a battle action force kind of comic. But yeah, really cool. Pinned down on the beach, the Brazilian commander wonders why the natives, who are usually peaceful, have turned hostile. A Brazilian corporal attempts to parley with the tribesmen, but is run through with a spear. An all-out firefight ensues, but the Brazilian commander refuses to risk a massacre of the natives and calls for an emergency evac. However, SAS Commando Quickfire won't leave without prisoners and manages to capture a native, knocking him out with the butt of his gun. During the melee, SAS Commando Samson is shot with an arrow. Aye! That's not our first IE, though, actually. I think there was one earlier in the issue.
The corporal being run through with the spear. Oh, there may have been a red shadow in the first mission.
In the first couple of pages, there's an IE by one of the red shadows who gets shot. So I'm just pointing that out now. We have passed our first IE, but again, in true battle action force style, we get loads of them. Absolutely loads of them in this issue.
It's unbelievable. With Samson being taken out, it's again the non-action figure character.
Big time.
Quickly bites the dust. The helicopters arrive and whip up the sand on the beach, giving the SAS and Brazilian forces cover to retreat. Our heroes use the low visibility to get to the choppers, but Eagle
Get to the chopper! Get to the chopper!
I put that in there on purpose. But Eagle and Stakeout, however, have other ideas. They use the confusion to hide in the jungle, intent on tracking the natives back to their village. As the helicopters leave, we see that Pele was not killed by the poison dart. He is bound and carried away by the tribesmen. Eagle notes that their seek and destroy mission has now also become a rescue mission.
I love that shot of the two of them kind of camoed up in the undergrowth. It's so what you'd expect from like jungle SAS operations, like them just skulking in, like, I don't know, I just really love that shot. Is so good, cool, and them like stalking these natives is so awesome.
It's a great little panel, and that's Jeff Campion's done some fantastic work on this, and that's just one example of where he's really just put the love in there. And he could have just drawn those guys with their the same gear they had on in the previous panel, but he's added in like the foliage in the helmets, the markings on the face, and he's done a really nice job on that.
Yeah, I love that a lot. Quickfire returns to base with his prisoner and reports that the mission is still on, with Eagle and Stakeout still operational in enemy territory. After interrogating his prisoner, he learns why the natives turned hostile. The tribesmen recounted how a man in white appeared to them and spoke in the Tupi tongue, telling them that they were chosen. They needed to prepare for war and build a shrine to protect him, obviously.
This is actually a really nice... So we've kind of moved into this sort of changeover in the art in this particular episode, and Cam Kennedy has stepped in to take over from Jeff Campion for a couple of issues.
Really nice, isn't it, as well?
Cam Kennedy, I am a massive fan of Cam Kennedy's work, and I love what he did on, say, the VC's 2000 AD story that maybe predates Battle Action Force, and he also went on to do a lot of work on in the Star Wars comic universe after this. But he's got a very unique style, and I love this. He gets the front cover for this particular issue as we move into Operation Bloodhound, where, as you just described, it's back at the Action Force base, and Quickfire is giving an update back to their commanders.
I like the fact that it's almost like just panels from the comic interior as well. Like, it's not just like a main image, one panel, etc., etc. It's like it's just continuing the story on the front cover. I think that's great.
That's a nice little touch. And even inside there, where we're getting during the interrogation of the prisoner, we get this little flashback to where Baron Armblood, the man in white, is kind of speaking in the Tupi tongue to the natives, and we get a look at who is possibly Baron Armblood unmasked. But like we were discussing earlier, we can't really see his features, and there's nothing there that can kind of link him back to his action figure.
Totally. Meanwhile, Eagle and Stakeout track the natives from the battle on the beach back to their village. They pinpoint the village's position on the map and radio its location back to base. A full-scale paradrop is ordered to attack and destroy the base, while Eagle and Stakeout are ordered to stand down.
However, the captured Pele is to be sacrificed on an altar, and our SAS heroes refuse to stand by and let him be killed. Eagle and Stakeout devise a plan to distract the natives. Improvising with one of their gas masks, Stakeout creates a makeshift disguise and approaches the tribesmen pretending to be the ancient Brazilian anteater god known as Cape Loco. Don't know if I'm saying that right.
Of course. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It looks like the distraction is working, but then we see that both Eagle and Stakeout are in the sights of snipers. They are both fired upon simultaneously, and Stakeout loses his gas mask. As a result, the charade is revealed.
I think it's Capolobo. I think it's a B.
Okay.
But still, I love this part. This is like the far-fetched aspect of it. I mean, what could you actually really do in that situation, to make a makeshift disguise? And it's fun and it's cool and it's funny. And, it works to a degree, like the fact that Eagle's actually shooting them from a distance when he gets near them. So it looks like, he is the god and he's causing them to die. That is like a good touch. I think that's quite funny. But then when there's a sniper out there taking them out, isn't there? Or trying to take them out.
Well, all of a sudden we see they've been illustrated in, clearly in sniper sights. But we've no idea who the snipers actually are. And clearly they must have been expecting them. So that raises the question, have they stumbled into some sort of an elaborate trap? We don't know. But certainly a curious one at that.
But before the natives can strike out at Stakeout or Pele, the Brazilian paras arrive and the village is engulfed in a battle. The paratroopers close in on a large domed building at the centre of the village, suspected to be the Baron's location, but as they move in, the walls collapse and a huge helicopter gunship is revealed with the Baron in the cockpit.
What a panel. What a scene there. That Red Shadow gunship looks amazing.
Yeah, big time.
And certainly would confirm the theory that perhaps this actually has been an elaborate ruse to draw in SAS Force and take them down.
Oh, totally, yeah. And I like the fact that we do see this actual helicopter in colour as well at some point. So we see that it's the green and the white kind of camouflage pattern on that helicopter, which I believe you're thinking it's probably a Sikorsky Mi-24 Hind.
That's the nearest reference I could find when I did a bit of quick research on it.
I think you're right.
Did we see that in, going off my memory here?
We've seen it a few times, mate, I think, yeah.
I'm thinking Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Yeah.
There's kind of a Huey. Rambo's in a Huey and he's being chased all over the jungle by...
that is a Hind, by Russians, I believe.
And that was a pretty cool sequence there. That was great.
But yeah, I think you're definitely right. Other than the two... There's like two pieces at the wings that kind of flip, that kind of tip down, which might make it a slightly different model. But I'm pretty sure that it's definitely a Hind. We just don't... I'm guessing it's just based on that Mi-24, definitely. So yeah, cool, man. Nice one.
So Pele and Stakeout, during all this ruckus, Pele and Stakeout have put aside their differences. They've been taking cover during the battle, and they see a surface-to-air missile launcher that was dropped during the fighting. They both work together to get it operational as the Baron's gunship starts to rise. They fire and hit the gunship. It crashes to the ground and explodes, killing all on board. Eagle seems content that their mission is now complete and comments that the unrest with the natives will also settle down now that the Baron has been destroyed. He looks forward to Samora at the Rio de Janeiro Carnival, which is due to start in a few days.
And yeah, is he actually dead? We probably don't really... Probably not. Obviously, that'd be the end of the...
That'd be the end of the
comic completely. So then we move into Mission 3, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. SAS Force and their Brazilian counterparts are relaxing and enjoying the festivities in Rio de Janeiro when the Brazilian colonel receives a telephone call. The news is not good. He informs Eagle that there have been many sightings across the Mato Grosso, Brazilian highlands, of white gods in disguised gunships landing in villages. Eagle surmises that the man killed in the gunship in their previous mission was most likely an imposter.
At that moment, a strange-looking float in the parade passes by where our heroes are seated.
Amazing.
It's the most ridiculous-looking float I've ever seen.
I could customise that because Kate's made a Baron Ironblood helmet, so I could stick that to the front of like a float and make that custom. But anyway, carry on.
The float is dressed up to look like a giant-sized Baron Ironblood. A Red Shadow suicide squad leap from the float, guns blazing.
The SAS force and Brazilian troop react quickly and easily to deal with the threat, but not before Pele sacrifices himself to stop a Red Shadow from throwing a stick grenade.
This chapter ends with Eagle telling us that the Suicide Squad left a lead, that the Bloodhound team can follow up, and that they leave tonight.
Hounds. That's quite a cool name for the team, isn't it?
For the squad, I mean, I like how he refers to it, come on, Hounds, where we leave tonight, and I thought that was a nice touch. They never refer to that any other way throughout the rest of the story, but we do have this kind of core team of Quickfire, Stakeout and Eagle, and then their various South American counterparts depending on what part of the continent they're in. It's a nice group name for that squad.
Also, it does tie in the operation name too, doesn't it? So I mean, you're keeping the title kind of fresh that's running through it. You're into like Mission 4 now, and you realise, oh yeah, it's still Operation Bloodhound I'm reading.
So Mission 4, and this is 4 of 7, I believe. Mission 4 is in Brasilia. So following up on the lead, Eagle and Sparrowhawk make a nighttime paradrop onto the roof of an African embassy in Brasilia, which is Brazil's capital city. At street level, we see a sports car speeding around a corner and crashing into a cart being pulled by a peasant farmer. The female driver of the car and the peasant engage in a very loud altercation. Taking advantage of the convenient distraction, Sparrowhawk and Eagle abseil down the side of the building and enter via a window.
Immediately on entering the building, the SAS Force commandos encounter a group of Red Shadow guards. They quickly dispatch them using silenced weapons and locate a vault. Using demolition charges, they blow the vault door, getting access to important files and also setting off the embassy alarm. Clumsy gits.
Sparrowhawk is winged by a Red Shadow guard hiding in the vault. Both he and Eagle recover video and audio tapes as well as microfilm documents and make a quick exit. Outside, the altercation between the peasant farmer and the driver of the sports car continues. Sparrowhawk and Eagle drop from a window into the peasant's hay cart, and the peasant reveals himself to be Trooper Albert Jones, aka Stakeout. The woman driver... Sorry, I'm getting carried away.
The woman driver pulls out a riot grenade and hurls it at the embassy guards. We see that she is actually Hans Muller, codenamed Quickfire in disguise. The SAS troops all jump into the sports car and make a swift getaway. Their destination, Ascendancy Island at Action Force HQ, where they can review the new evidence that will help lead them to Baron Ironblood.
So there's a few things we're talking about in that sequence, and obviously one of the first things is Sparrowhawk is introduced. He hasn't appeared in any Action Force stories to date, so this is his entry into the Action Force universe.
Which is very cool. Actually, Sparrowhawk's one of my favourites because he looks so cool as a figure because he's got all of the parachute gear. So he just looks so cool. And I think it was that kind of like the 12-inch version, like the SAS para attack, I think it is, or para, I think it's para, whatever it is, it's the paratrooper, SAS paratrooper one. I used to have that as a kid, loved it so much, and it's kind of, Sparrowhawk is like the 4-inch version of that as well, so that kind of made it even more kind of cool for me.
Well, Sparrowhawk and Skip were my kind of joint favourite Action Force figures as a kid. And it's just, again, the sculpt, you've got that kind of helicopter pilot kind of helmet, and as you say, all the para gear that comes with them. Super cracking figure.
And also, we never actually learn what lead they get from the Suicide Squad and how it can lead to an African embassy. So that's kind of interesting. They keep that information very close to the chest.
It's never actually revealed to us at all. So even during that sequence where the Suicide Squad during the carnival attacks them, there's no reference to any information that they might have gathered. Like, there was no survivors from they couldn't interrogate anybody. We didn't see them recover any documents from the dead Red Shadows. But that particular issue ends with Eagle telling us that, yeah, we got a lead and it's going to take us to Brasilia. And even then, you're expecting that we might maybe, get an insight as to what the lead was, but it's never actually revealed to us. So maybe it's a little bit of a hole in the continuity, but it doesn't stop us from getting lots of SAS Force action.
Muller in drag, that's amazing. Love that.
That is just shocking. You just see him.
I don't think he pulls it off necessarily, but still, no. I still would.
To close out our sort of Operation Bloodhound Part 1, this really, back in 1983, we would have had an end to the story here, or an interlude, I should say, where the next issue of Battle Action Force didn't actually feature Operation Bloodhound. Instead, it was replaced with the story Attack, which we've covered on Disorder of Battle previously.
So go watch that now.
Absolutely, and that just gives you a chance to see what Baron Ironblood's been doing while SAS Force have been trying to track him down. And Operation Bloodhound Part 2 will resume then in a couple of weeks.
Yep, when we get to it, when Brian gets to that part of the document. This is such a massive, massive story that it's how many pages does it cover on Blood for the Baron, Brian?
99 pages on Blood for the Baron, and that counts spreads as a single page. So
wow.
There's over 100 pages for this particular story. So it's a real epic, and not many Battle Action Force stories would rival, certainly in the Action Force section of it, would kind of rival that in terms of length. Yeah. So it's a real whopper. So we're going to break it up into 3 parts. Part 1 brings us up to kind of a natural interlude where it goes off to look at what Baron Ironblood's doing, and then we'll pick it up again as SAS Force begin to take action on some of this new evidence they've uncovered.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thanks, mate, for jumping on and chatting that one. Again, it's a big story, so we can save our kind of conclusions to the end for like part 3, but as a part 1, a pretty solid amount of missions going on, a lot of movement around the globe, well, around South America, a lot of characters being kind of brought in the SAS team. Really interesting so far.
Yeah, this is again a great follow-up to the mini-comic series. So when this story even began, and it's worth noting this here, when this story, or prior to this story, when we had the Ascendancy Island mission and we had the mini-comics, Battle was just called Battle. That was the name of the comic, and it featured these Action Force stories. But when Operation Bloodhound kicked in, Battle rebranded as Battle Action Force.
The new Battle Action Force. Sorry. Yeah.
And it would hold that title right through to, I think, late 86, when the Action Force stories were pretty much wrapped up at that stage. So we get a good 3 to 4 year run of, good 3 year run of Action Force stories.
Yeah, and I would say we're about 20% in, would you say? With
I'd say is
this episode 15? Like, it's crazy. Like, we're 15 episodes in, and we've only got the first part of this one. Once we've completed part 2 and 3 of this, there's still a lot of stories to cover. It's quite remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot, but great story. So look, we've got content to keep us going for years.
Oh God! Everyone's just gone. Really? Do you have to? Anyway, Brian, thanks, mate, for jumping on and obviously doing most of the legwork for this one.
My pleasure. Absolutely, my pleasure.
Brian Legwork Hickey. That's it for the first part of this massive comic story. We hope you enjoyed this episode with Disorder of Battle. Thank you to my co-host Brian Legwork Hickey and to our sponsors Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. See you guys next time, and as always, full force.
Aye.
Oh yeah, or Wilhelm scream. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce. Facebook.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Dublin City Comics and Collectibles. Located at 46 Bolton Street, Inns Quay, Dublin 1, Ireland, you can visit their website at dublincitycomics.ie and on Facebook at facebook.com/Dublin City Comics.